Today we're making a cinnamon raisin bread, and it's not just a normal bread, it's a braided bread with a cinnamon filling and raisins, and it is super soft and fluffy. This bread does not require any bread machine. We're going to knead the dough all by our hands. It tastes as good as it sounds, so let's make some homemade bread. Since this is a cinnamon raisin bread, we're going to start off with soaking our raisins. So that's 1 cup of raisins in a bowl, and you just want to add enough hot water to cover up the raisins. Let it sit for around 10 minutes, then you can drain them. The reason why we're soaking the raisins is because this will make our raisins more plump and moist instead of shriveled and dry. I find that soaking the raisins makes them plump, and it also adds moisture to your dough, but you could always skip it. Now moving on to the actual bread, you are going to need 2 cups of bread flour. The proper way of measuring is to first stir the flour with a spoon just to lighten it up, and then scoop the flour into the measuring cup all the way to the top, then use the back of a spoon to level the excess off. This will give you an accurate 1 cup of flour. So you want to add the 2 cups of bread flour to a clean, large mixing bowl. Before you move on, you want to take 3/4 of a cup of milk and heat it up to 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or you can microwave it for 32 seconds at 900 watts like I did. Back to the flour, you are going to add 1/4 cup of white granulated sugar, then make 2 wells in the flour, and to one of the wells add half a teaspoon of salt, and to the other well add 1 packet of instant dry yeast, which is equivalent to 2 1/4 teaspoons or 7 grams. There are 2 kinds of yeast, one is active dry and the other is instant. Instant dry yeast does not require proofing, we can just add it directly to the flour. We're adding the salt and yeast separately because if the salt directly touches the yeast, it may kill the yeast, so just to be safe. Now take a wooden spoon and mix the yeast first, then the sugar, then the salt, then mix everything together. Now we're going to pour in the warm milk, and make sure it is warm, not hot. When you put your finger in the milk, it shouldn't be so hot that you immediately take your finger out. It should just feel like warm tap water, and that is how we tell if the milk is around 120 degrees. So add the warm milk to the flour. You want to save a little bit of milk, and you'll see why later. And then add 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil and 1 whole room temperature egg. That means the egg shouldn't feel cold. Take the wooden spoon and just kind of break up the egg first, then mix everything up. Once you see that the wet ingredients has pretty much been absorbed, adding the remaining milk. So, if you add the milk all at once, the flour may absorb all the milk and you will be left with a dry mixture, so it's better to keep a wetter mixture than a drier mixture. This is what it should look like as of now. Now you want to take 1/4 cup of bread flour and just add some to the mixture and mix that in. Next, add in the raisins that has been drained from earlier and just use a wooden spoon to mix that in until it is fully distributed. And now the dough mixture should look pretty wet and not yet like a dough, but that's okay because we are going to knead it. Dust your working surface with a generous amount of flour, then transfer the dough to the working surface. The dough is going to be really sticky, so use a lot of flour. Dust your dough with more flour, and you want to start kneading by just using a scraper and your hands and fold the dough. You're going to keep on adding flour and turning the dough over, so here we're just trying to get the dough together. So you can see I've already used up 1/4 cup of flour, so I'm going to refill another 1/4 cup of bread flour. So keep adding the flour and turning the dough over and knead the dough with your hand. Your hand is going to be sticky, but that's how it's supposed to be. My way of kneading is pushing the dough forward, then pull it back. Push it forward and pull it back. And this way, by adding the flour as we knead, we get to feel if the dough is too wet or dry. After some time, like 20 minutes or so, your dough will actually look like a dough. It will stick less and less, and it will become more smooth and elastic. When the dough doesn't really stick and look smooth, you don't want to add any more flour. Just keep on kneading for a few more minutes and then you're done. I kneaded my dough for a total of 25 to 30 minutes, and overall in total I used 2.5 cups of flour. So that means I used half a cup of flour when I was kneading. The dough should look nice and smooth, and you can tell it's done when you see that your hands are not messy anymore. Trust your bread instinct here. Now that you're done with kneading, cover the dough with a bowl or a towel on the counter and just let it rest for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, while the dough is resting, let's prepare the filling, which is just 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and 4 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. You want to give that a good mix around. After 10 minutes, look at that, beautiful dough kneaded by our own hands. So take your dough and lightly flour your work surface and roll the dough out into a 12 by 9 inch rectangle. This is the part where we're going to put our cinnamon and wrap it up and braid the dough. So now that your dough is 12 by 9 inches, you want to cut the dough into 3 equal 12 by 3 inches strips. Each strips are going to be covered with butter and cinnamon. Yep. So here I have a tablespoon of softened butter, and you just want to use the back of a spoon and take some of that butter and spread it onto the surface of each strip. Make sure the strips get all that butter all around. Now spoon the cinnamon brown sugar mixture on top of the strips. Be generous here. The sugar may look like a lot, but it is just right. Use up all the sugar mixture, evenly distribute it among the 3 strips so that you get that cinnamony goodness. You want to leave a bit of space around the edges. And now it's time to close the strip so we can form it into a braid. For each strip, pull the sides of the dough and then seal it together. Stretch the dough and close it up. The dough should easily stick. You want to use your fingers to seal them so none of that cinnamon run away. Do that for all the 3 strips. Once you've done that, you want to flip the strips over so the same side is at the bottom. And now let's start braiding. First take the top strip and place it on top of the middle strip. And then take the bottom strip and place it on top of both strips and make that the middle strip. Then take what is not the bottom strip and overlap the middle, making the bottom the middle. Then take the top, overlap the middle to make the top strip in the middle. Then take the bottom and it goes to the middle. Then take the top and it goes to the middle. It's kind of like a pattern. The bottom goes to the middle, then the top goes to the middle. It's not that complicated. Once you've reached the end, just tuck both ends under, and that is our braided bread! Now you want to carefully and gently use both hands to transfer the dough onto a baking sheet lined with parchment paper, and we're almost done. Now we're going to let the dough rise for 1 to 1.5 hours or until it doubles in size. So cover the dough with a towel, and what I like to do is place it in an oven that is turned off and just leave it there for 1 hour to rise. After 1 hour, the bread should have doubled in size and it is time to bake it. So now you want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. While the oven's preheating, gently brush the top of the bread with some extra milk with a pastry brush. Brushing the milk will give your final bread a nice brown finished look on the surface. Once your oven is preheated, go ahead and bake the bread for 25 minutes. And that is our cinnamon raisin bread. Your house will smell wonderful like cinnamon goodness and fresh bread. And look at that, that is our homemade freshly baked bread that just came out of the oven. It is all nicely browned on the top. It looks absolutely amazing. Just let it cool a bit, then you can use a serrated knife to slice into it. I mean, come on, who doesn't like a slice of bread that just came out of the oven? Let me tell you, this is all warm, soft, and fluffy, and you get that cinnamon buttery raisin filling. There's just something so special about homemade bread. I mean, like, the smell of bread, the taste, the love, the work that you put into it. This bread is kneaded all by our hand, and now you have a loaf of braided bread. You'll want to go back for a second slice. You can also store the bread on the countertop at room temperature and it'll stay soft for 3 days. You want to take the bread along with the parchment paper and just put it in a baking tray and cover the bread with plastic wrap. So there you go, cinnamon raisin bread. No bread machine, just by hand. I hope you give this a try. Making bread may take you quite some time and there will be flour all over your kitchen. But hey, after all, making bread is all about patience, time, and most importantly, love.